I mean, this is the episode where nothing happens, but at the same time, everything falls apart. And honestly, it's just flabbergasting. It opens up with Nori and the stranger, which at this point now it seems like either maybe he's Saruman, maybe he's one of the other. He's gonna have to definitely be one of the Istari. Now the question is whether he's even, what is his real purpose? Is he really good? Here she's just having a discussion about, on the one hand, trying to teach him what her people do, which is do these migrations to survive. And it gets really convoluted in the sense that we don't know how far they have to go to get where they're going. We don't know how much time they're spending. It seems like it's taking forever. Um, there's no sense of time, you know? I mean, keep in mind that whoever this figure is, if it's something that they completely created for themselves for the show, or if it's supposed to be connected to the lore at all in any kind of way, he has to it has to make sense in some form. It has to fall into place in some form. And it's you can't really go by the lore on the show because they don't respect it. If he is an Istari, he would have never been here in the first place. There's only three things of major note in the Second Age, and that's the forging of the rings, which Sauron has a hand in that, and the resulting destruction of Eregion when the elves realize what Sauron is really up to. That's like in the first 1,000 to 1,500 years. Then the rise of Numenor as a maritime empire, and after this event, after the rings, how they contest Sauron and capture him, bring him back, and how that leads to their downfall when he becomes the advisor to the king, which is Pharazôn at that point. That leads to the downfall of Numenor. That's around 3,200 of this age, and how that then leads to Elendil and his sons forming the kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor in exile in Middle-earth, and how they form the last alliance of elves and men to fight against Sauron and get the ring off him, because we know that when we get to Lord of the Rings, he doesn't have the ring anymore. So those are the three major events. And already off the bat in this season 1, they're already mixing the forging of the rings with the end of Numenor, when they're spaced out by like a good 1,700 years. So it's impossible to look at this and try to make sense of it in any form. But who this guy is at this point, honestly, I don't know. I don't know what they want him to be. He could be anything. They literally let people die on the migration if they fall behind. They don't help anybody out. They don't care. They just let you die, and then they write your name in a book. Then we have the introduction of these people, and I can't tell you what these people are. These people show up where, let's say Gandalf, whatever, the stranger guy, crashed, and obviously they want to know. They must know what he is or who he is, and they're basically tracing him. Is the concept that they're giving us here. It's unclear if what he's saying, that he's going to transform this land into what we know in Lord of the Rings to become Mordor. I don't know. That guy, he thinks it's Sauron for sure. That we know for a fact. And he tries to convince them. He's like, no, we should go to this Sauron and bow down to him. And convinces a number of them to do it. Back in Numenor, remember he was on the ship. He messed up because he's daydreaming about wanting to go to the west, and then he gets him and his friends fired off the ship, Now he's going to his dad. Now that everyone's gonna go to fight in Middle Earth, right? Like, so basically, Dad, I got fired from the job you wanted me to get. Can you get me back in the job because the queen? The fact of the matter is that in the actual lore, the Numenorians were at one point split between what were called the King's Men and the Faithful. The Faithful were faithful to their origins because remember, Elros was half elven. He was the brother of Elrond, but he chose to be counted among men. So their origin is elvish in the terms of their heritage, and they walked away from that because they felt that it was holding them back. The whole thing about Numenorians is that as they progress in their history, they become more proud and more obsessed with wanting to be immortal like the elves. But obviously, that's not their, that's not part of their fate. Yeah. So, but here they're trying to make it about this trip. Here they're trying to make it more. I guess they think this is more dynamic within the show. Have them fight about the queen's decision to go to Middle Earth, which they would have never fought over. And this girl, the sister, is trying to convince this guy to talk to Farazan to change his mind. And basically, he tells her, this is hilarious because this is, again, women in the show failing 101 again. He tells her, like, when I talk to this guy, he doesn't listen. And watch what she says.
Speak. His ears close up.
So speak louder.
Isn't that great advice? If someone doesn't listen to you, just yell at them. So I don't know how all of a sudden, now he's allowed to forge a sword, and he not only is he a first time forging a sword supposedly, but he forges an amazing sword, right? So wow, we are so impressed. Basically, Galadriel is gaslighting everyone so that she can get what she wants. She told the queen that he was on board, that he was going to take up the kingship and rally the people of the Southlands, whatever. And he's like, no, I didn't say anything. Why did you tell her that? Everything in the motivation of his character so far is that he wants to get away from where he was from and whatever his life was over there, and he wants to start a new life here on this island. But no, she doesn't care.
You used me.
This lady's trying to convince him that they should literally let Nori's family starve and not even allow them to come along. Like, she's literally wants them to be sabotaged. And so we basically have a scene where they literally would have gotten killed and eaten by these monsters. Okay, what was that? Is it to show that he has powers that are beyond his understanding and that can hurt himself and others? I guess. It could be 2-3 guys against her. She's wearing no kind of armor, but she moves so fast. She has the gall to tell them that fighting is not about strength, it's about balance. There it is. How do you even block that way? So this guy got promoted. Remember, he's Isildur's friend. He got promoted to lieutenant just because he managed to scratch this little elven lady. The context in this scene is so weird because, like, he looks like he's terrified of Farazan. But we have had nothing so far in any of the episodes show us why we should be scared of this man. He seems like he just does whatever the queen tells him to do. He seems very much a politician, but he doesn't show us anything to convince us that he's a formidable politician, that if you cross him, he's gonna chop your head off mafia style or something like that. But nonetheless, the actor does a good job of conveying that in this scene when he tells him, like, I don't understand, why don't you convince the queen not to do this? It's not good for anyone. And he's like, yeah, it is, because we are gonna win, which he would be correct. We're gonna win, and we are going to basically dominate the trade in Middle Earth this way, and why would I be against that? It had the potential to be a menacing scene because of how he finally gets in his face,
That might benefit us.
but it's completely out of context with the rest of the show and the rest of the episodes and what we've seen these guys develop so far.
That not throw the summit to the sea. Then neither should you.
But at least you finally get a little bit of development for this character where you're like, okay, he's got other things in mind. He's not just doing whatever the queen tells him to do. You know, obviously by slamming his arm, he damaged it. It burns, and he's mumbling something and literally freezing his arm to heal it. She puts her hand on him. She puts her hand on him. She can clearly see he's freezing up. And now she's freezing up, and she's telling him to stop when he's clearly in a meditative state. And she acts as if now he's dangerous. She's scared of him. Well, it's like, why did you put your hand on him? He was healing himself. You're the one that stepped into something, and now you want to act like he's the problem? This is so, if you wanted to show that she was in over her head and she didn't understand that this guy is a power to be reckoned with, and he doesn't even know what he's doing with his power, this isn't the way to show that. And we get the impression that Gil-galad is finally he knows all about the mithril, and he kind of wants Durin to confess about it. And Durin does this thing, like Durin pretends that the rock of this table is a rock that would be sacred to the dwarves, playing a joke on them. And I don't understand what the whole point of that. What, you want to make a fool of the elves and show that they're idiots? That this plays so badly because, first of all, they would know where the rock would come from and whether he was full of it or not. I don't know, it also left me a really bad taste in my mouth about Durin. Like, I don't care for people that are like that level of sarcasm. It also doesn't go with the dwarves. I've never seen Tolkien depict a dwarf as a cynical, sarcastic character. And this is the most sacrilegious part of the entire thing. This is the part of the show where the impression they're trying to give is that they need the metal to be even able to survive, to be able to fight Sauron or any evil, because their own power and their own inner energy is not enough anymore because everything is in decay. Wow, do you not know anything about elves? The worst part is that they're trying to insinuate that somehow a Silmaril got stuck in a tree, and that an elf, as you see in this sad little picture, an elf and a Balrog fought over the tree in a nonsensical way because it doesn't even make sense. They were deadlocked. Lightning strikes the tree, and the light of the Silmaril that's trapped in the tree gets buried into the ground and into the earth and into the mountain. So Mithril is literally Silmaril energy trapped into the mountain through lightning striking a tree. The Mithril has both the power of good and evil locked into it because of, oh my god, because a Balrog and an elf fought over the tree while it had a Silmaril trapped inside. Lightning strikes it, and that energy gets shot down into the mountain, and that's how Mithril is created. That is the biggest load of crap I could ever come up with, and it's the most insulting thing because one thing is when you take liberties like they have been taking, and another thing is when you literally erase canon lore. There's 3 Silmarils. We know exactly what happened to all 3 of them. One gets thrown into the sea. One gets thrown into a volcano. If you wanted to say that it was the one that got thrown into the volcano and somehow they found it at the bottom of the volcano somewhere deep underground, that's one thing. And then the 3rd Silmaril is the one that Elrond's father used on his ship to light the way to Valinor in the First Age, to convince them to come help defeat Morgoth. And it's that Silmaril stayed with him on the ship, and he forever sails the sky as the evening star. It's a poetic thing. So no Silmaril ever got locked in a tree. It's impossible. It could never happen. And this is the most insulting thing they've done yet. They didn't need to create it. There's no need to pretend that Mithril has some kind of special power. And if you wanted to make it have a special power, you did not need to involve the Silmarils into it. But that's what they did. Like, everybody knows what's happening here. Why don't you just tell him, like, listen, can you go to your dwarf friend and convince him to give us some of that, or trade it with us? And then Elrond's like, but I can't betray the dwarf. I can't tell you. It's like, I already know he has Mithril though. They're just using Middle Earth as a playground for their own little stories at this point. And this is funny because he's like, his own friend calls him out on his dumb crap. He's like, the only reason you're even apologizing is because you know I'm a lieutenant now and you want to use my influence to get you on the ship. Yeah, you're pretty much right. I'm using you. So he's like, okay. And he's like, so yeah, forget you. I'm not gonna do it. And he's like, okay. Well, I'll. What if I let you punch me? I'll give you 2 hits. And he literally does it. He literally does it. Yeah, I'm still not gonna help you because you're an asshole. Which, at least it's realistic. At least that makes sense. What do you think his next move is gonna be? Try to guess. I mean, at this point, we might as well try to guess how bad this stuff is gonna go. Shit.
Are you stowing away?
They're just watching the fire get closer to the thing. And of course it blows up. Nobody wonders if it's them that did it. Farazan just told that guy, why would I stop it? I want this to happen. And now he's turning around and he's going to tell the queen, maybe we should reconsider. Why? You just said you don't care. You just said that it was important for you for this to go through. One ship is not going to matter. Every scene that he has with Elrond, he's like, oh, I forgot to tell you this. I forgot to tell you that your father said this to me about you, and I forgot that this, and I just happened to remember it at the most important moment that becomes relevant for the story. And Elrond is acting as if he's put between a rock and a hard place. He has to decide between whether he's going to break an oath to a friend or save his people. The motivation of Halbrand is, I want to get away from my past. I'm coming to this island so I can start over. And her thing is, I don't care what you want to do. So I'm telling you that it's for your own good to come with me and keep fighting. I'm sorry, that's not going to convince me. Why don't you make me understand how going back home is going to help me have a new life? Convince me that what I left behind has value and that I can contribute something of worth where I can make up for whatever I did in the past. And then that would give him motivation. That wasn't hard to do, right? What I do like about his character, and goes along with my own philosophy of the Dark Ember, is the fact that he's a redeemable character. He's someone that has murdered people, has killed probably kids, we don't know, for Morgoth, Sauron, whatever the heck you want to call it. And he can use his skills as a murderer, as a warrior, as whatever. He can still use it to do something constructive with it. And that's what his journey should be. And they're at least insinuating that. But they're not giving him motivation to make his own decision. I agree with this. Most people don't get this theme about to find the light, you have to touch the darkness. That's totally what the Dark Ember is about. That's the only thing in the show right now that I can totally get 100% behind. However, it's not really... it's not really what Tolkien touches upon so much. He doesn't have dark characters that become light. He has tragic characters that, through their obsession, make things worse. Which I guess Galadriel horse in this is doing that, but that was never her function. I think the only reason they use Galadriel is because she probably polls well from Lord of the Rings. Everybody liked her in Lord of the Rings, and we don't have another elvish female character that's visible enough for people. But it's still a horrible mistake. She's basically admitting that she's a terrible leader. The people I led mutinied against me.
My closest friend.
Her closest friend conspired with the king to Elrond, which by the way he didn't. When has she ever given us a sense that she's dangerous? Have you ever felt she's dangerous? I haven't. Because she's just a manipulative person that is continuously just pulling at his strings to get what she wants. And if he doesn't agree, she's just going to coerce him into doing it. Like I said, all she had to say was, you want to start a new life. You want to forget your past. You want to show that you can be useful. That's why you want to be a blacksmith. You want to do something simple. What if you could start a new life back home and make amends for the damage that you did at the same time? That's all she needed to say. That's not what she says. The way that he wants this guy to show his fealty to him is by killing another human being. And of course he's going to pick a boy. And of course they're not going to show it to us. They're just going to insinuate it. Raise your bow higher. And he's like, I don't know, I suck at this. He's like, well, but you're brave. It took me 1,000 years to work up bravery to even fight evil, and you're only 12. So you're way ahead of me, buddy. So keep trying hard for me. That's literally what this was. But suddenly, we discover that in this tower all along was this little statue with a replica of it, and that he says it's a key, but he doesn't tell us what it's a key to, because I don't know if they know what it's a key to yet. This suddenly takes a 180-degree turn. Again, the show creating drama for the sake of drama. This girl suddenly decides, I don't want to fight anymore. We're not going to live. We're all going to die, so I don't think I want to fight. He's like, really? After all of this, you're just going to give up? You can't give up. She's like, yes, I can. Watch me. Now, if I was this character at this point in time, and I realized I'm the only elf, and these people have basically given up, I would leave. And I would go to Linden. At this point, that's where he should be going. Should be going to Linden, the Gil-galad, be like, hey, they took us all captives. The humans betrayed us as we expected. We got to go try to help our own kind and forget humans. We're always going to be losers. And so here comes the moment, right, where he's supposed to reveal to him and tell him, hey, I lied to you, but I didn't know I was lying to you. And it turns out that they do want your mithril. So he's like, dude. He's like, whoa. The insinuation that the elves, the survival of the elves would in any way, shape, or form be dependent on the dwarves in any kind of way is the second most insulting thing they've done. This is the second age. This isn't even the third age. They still have enough power. Elrond will go to war. Gil-galad will go to war against Sauron with the ring. And it's not because of mithril. So the whole insinuation is insulting from the lore standpoint. If you could go back in time and tell Tolkien, listen, we're gonna do a show of your wonderful books, but in them, the elves are gonna be depending on the dwarves to survive. He would have been like, oh, forget it then. You don't get it. Forget it.
The fate of the entire elven race is in my hands.
And instead of this being a moment, obviously the moment is supposed to be also, wow, I didn't realize how important what I discovered is and what it's going to mean to Middle Earth or whatever. Say it again.
The fate of the entire elven race.
Say it again. Say it again, Biz. Yeah, we get it. It's funny. It's hilarious. It's ironic. It's not true. And it's okay to poke fun, but now you're getting annoying. He did it 3 times. And Gil-galad is spying. He's a little spy. People make fun of this. I mean, that was a motif, and it was a motif. In the Lord of the Rings, Aragorn ends up having a helmet with wings. It wasn't meant to be a funny thing. That's kind of a very Nordic thing from medieval times. You know, it wasn't a cynical time in medieval times. You really needed to be able to fight. You know, so if you adorned yourself with something, it was nobody would mock you over it. We can make fun of it now. It could be silly to us now, but it's meant to carry weight. Maybe the design is silly, but it's not meant to be silly. The girl that has no purpose, she's now a political pawn. The division between the King's Men and the Faithful and Numenor is something that exists in the lore, but it's something that exists way before here. Here they're trying to make it about the trip to Middle-earth, which is something that would not have divided the Numenorians. They would have been united on that front. They're just divided on whether they want to use the Elvish traditions and tongues of their history versus their own language and their own traditions that they are establishing on the island. That's it. It has nothing to do with that. But here they're making it as if she's panicking because homeboy guy, like our guy in the end, did not go to jail. He passed go and collected $200 and he got his own suit. This feels like it should have been a moment between them. They should have had a discussion about it. So we end this episode in the same place we ended the last episode. Remember the last episode we were going to go to Middle-earth? Yeah, we're still here. And we are finally going to Middle-earth, supposedly. But weren't you waiting for Galadriel Horse to don her armor? How she got her armor back? When she left it in Lindon, remember? This is the same armor she had way back like in episode 1 or 2, right? And now suddenly it reappears magically. The motivations of the characters are created, then ignored or destroyed or reversed in the same breath. In the same episode. Why is she the only one without a helmet? Like, do women not need helmets? Do you not know that somebody could just pull her hair? If she's in a fight and somebody gets a hold of her hair, they literally just have to pull her hair and cut her throat and she's dead. I mean, that's why you don't have long hair or you have it tucked in a freaking helmet. It would have been Farazan, not Muriel, going, but whatever. So we're finally leaving, we hope. It would be funny if they find another reason not to leave. That's it. This is it. This is the end of the episode. Did you love it? That's it. I don't know what they plan to do on Friday. They dismantled everything they tried to set up. They reversed character motivations or destroyed them or pretended they didn't exist all of a sudden. Elves apparently can't live without mithril now. The dwarves are the only ones that have mithril. That's at least partially true. But suddenly the dwarves are going to feel sympathetic towards the elves. That would have never happened. The dwarves only cared about mining and about amassing hoards of wealth. So they would not have cared about helping the elves in any kind of sense. The rings haven't even been made. We don't know really how they're going to get made. What's the motivation behind why they're getting made? If they had said, we need to make the rings so that we can survive on Middle-earth, that would make sense because that ends up being the actual effect of the rings of power. The 3 elven rings have the power to prevent decay. Going back to the concept of eternity, like in Genshin, the elves are about eternity. They're about preserving something eternally because they don't die. So they would want something that would give them the power to prevent trees from dying, things from decaying, their infrastructure from decaying, all of that. protecting themselves from anything outside that is not elvish, which is what they do, because when we get to Lord of the Rings, that's basically what they have created. They've created places where they can hide out and preserve themselves and preserve the land around them. In Linden, and you know where the rings are technically by where these places are. Linden, which is already exists at this point, okay. Rivendell, which doesn't exist yet, even in the show, and Lothlorien, which we haven't even addressed in the show yet. Because Eregion is where Galadriel was in the lore. She's there with her husband and her daughter. Elrond does go to Eregion, and when the elves suspect that Sauron is actually, using them to make these rings, a fight breaks out. And in the process of the fight, Sauron destroys Eregion, Galadriel runs off to Lothlorien, and Elrond retreats to what becomes Rivendell, and they are saved by the Númenóreans. But this was in the year 1500. Meanwhile, Pharazôn existed in the year 3200. So it doesn't make sense from a timeline sense, but that would be the only thing that would make sense. If you said that the rings were going to provide them with the power to survive in Middle-earth, that makes sense. Mithril has no such effect. Like, remember we had a little more context before when they were building the trench. That made sense. They were building a trench to someplace, maybe Mordor, because they're trying to get there and establish Barad-dûr, because the Tower of Sauron gets created in the Second Age. Look, if that hilt came from Sauron in any possible way, the elf would want to have nothing to do with it. He wouldn't even use it. If anything, he would try to destroy it. So that doesn't even make sense. I like to discuss how it should have been, because there is a lot of depth in what is in the material already. The Second Age literally only has 3 major events to talk about, but there's enough in those 3 major events that you could have done a season out of each and left it there. You could have done 3 seasons worth of stuff just based on those 3 major events, maybe 4, which is already a lot for most TV shows, especially if you're going to stick to the Second Age. If you're going to be able to bleed into the Third Age, then you can do there's a little bit more material there. But you could have literally followed the material, and it would have led you the right way, and it would have given you enough, and you would have been able to take in certain licenses because there's plenty there for you to play with. But they're not even doing that. They're using this as a vehicle to be woke and to create a strong female figure for the sake of creating a strong female figure, who in the end actually is looking to be actually just as bad as Sauron, because she just does what she wants to do, and if she doesn't, she pouts and cries and makes a scene about it. Clearly, what we do know is that the Númenóreans, if they go to Middle-earth, they're going to conquer Middle-earth. They may help out in this war, but how they're going to play out this war at this point is unclear, because they seem to want to bait you into believing something. They want to bait you into think it's Gandalf or Saruman, but at the same time they're not moving anything forward, so it's hard to say. But we'll see on Friday.